There is a moment you probably know intimately. Something happens, a comment, a text, a tone of voice, and every rational thought you have just vanishes. And then you don't respond, you react. And later, sometimes minutes later, you think, why did I do that? That moment is not a character flaw. It is not a weakness. It's actually neuroscience in action. And once you understand exactly what is happening in your brain at that moment, you get something most people never have, a choice. I'm Kristin Horstman, and I spent 20 years drinking alcohol to manage stress before I understood what stress was actually doing to my brain. At that time, alcohol was the only self-regulation tool that I had. Now, I help people build better ones. And today, I'm teaching you the exact framework that changed everything for me and for every client that I've worked with since. This framework comes from Dr. Dan Siegel, a clinical professor of psychiatry at UCLA and one of the leading voices in interpersonal neurobiology. And it's called the hand model of the brain. It sounds almost too simple, but that's exactly why it works. You don't need a neuroscience degree. You need something that works when every part of you is screaming to react. Now, before I show you the model, I need to tell you something that most people get completely wrong. When we're triggered, we tell ourselves to calm down. We try to reason with ourselves. We lean on willpower, but then it doesn't work. Well, here's why. Willpower is a function of your logical brain. And in a high stress situation, your logical brain has already gone offline. So you're trying to use a tool that isn't even available to you. This is not a mindset problem. This is biology. And understanding that distinction changes everything. Because the moment you stop blaming yourself for reacting, you can start building something that actually gets you the results that you're looking for. That's what the model teaches you. So here's how it works. Okay, so I want you to hold up your hand with me. Now, your hand is acting like your brain. Every part of it maps to a real neurological structure. Your wrist is acting like your brainstem. Your brainstem is the oldest, most primitive part of the brain. It manages those survival basics like breathing, heart rate, and keeping you alive. It's running constantly in the background. Now I want you to fold your thumb across your palm. This is your limbic system, otherwise known as your emotional brain. This is where feelings live, where threat detection lives, where your fight, flight, and freeze response is housed. Now, I want you to fold your fingers down over your thumb. Right here, this is your prefrontal cortex. It's the top of your brain, the part that makes you human. This is the part where rational thought, impulse control, emotional regulation, and decision-making live. Now, when all of this is connected, this is you at your best. You're present, you're grounded, and you're able to choose how you respond. Now, here is what happens when stress hits. Your limbic system activates. The threat detector fires, and then your prefrontal cortex goes offline. Dr. Siegel calls this flipping your lid. That phrase matters because that's exactly what it feels like. Your logical brain hasn't disappeared. It has been overridden. The emotional brain starts running the show on pure instinct. Here's what almost nobody tells you. The limbic brain does not understand language. You can't reason with it. You cannot talk yourself down while you're fully in it. This is why something like alcohol works so fast in that moment, or food, or your phone, or whatever you reach for when the pressure spikes. The animal brain just wants the fastest route out of discomfort, and it will find one. But there is a different path, and it starts with one skill. Now, Viktor Frankl wrote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose. That space is real, and noticing it is a learnable skill. Every time you catch yourself starting to flip, you are engaging new circuits in your brain. You are building new neural pathways, and you are literally rewiring your stress response. Now, the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system are connected. Like any connection, the more you strengthen it, the faster you can return to regulation. The faster you return to regulation, the more choice you have. That is emotional sobriety, not the absence of emotion, but the ability to move through it without being hijacked by it. So let me show you what that actually looks like in real life. About 2.5 years into my sobriety, I remember walking into the living room and I could feel, before a single word was even spoken, that something was a little off with my husband. Then I said something that triggered him and his lid flipped. And then I felt mine start to go up too. But I noticed it. I had enough of a connection to my prefrontal cortex to recognize what was happening. And I knew if we're both dysregulated, we cannot have a productive conversation. So I left the room. I also wound up slamming the door on my way out. But because I was present and sober, I noticed that too. And what I actually did was, as soon as I noticed it, I turned right back around, went back in the room, and I apologized to my husband for slamming that door. And then I explained to him that I was going to go outside for a little while to get myself regulated, and I was going to come back later. Now, before I understood this framework, that moment would have gone completely differently. Before years of building this prefrontal limbic connection, my animal brain would have won. But here's what I didn't know at first, that understanding the framework and actually building the skill are two completely different things. That's where most people get stuck. They learn the framework, they understand it, but then the next time they get triggered, nothing changes. Well, it turns out knowing this model is step one, because knowing is not enough. The reason people stay stuck in reactive patterns, even when they intellectually understand what's happening, is that they haven't built the physiological practices that actually strengthen the prefrontal limbic connection. Breathing, grounding, somatic tools, these aren't buzzwords. They are the mechanism to change. They are how the new neural pathways get built. This is the work I do with my clients inside Brighten Your Life coaching. We don't just talk about the brain, we train it. And we train it using neuroscience-based practices that address both the psychological and physiological roots of dysregulation. If you find that you keep reaching for alcohol or anything else that's outside of yourself to manage stress, and you want to understand what exactly is driving that and how to change it at the source, the link to work with me is in the description below. I hope you leave today with a better understanding of yourself and your brain than you had when you clicked on this video. The best way to bring back that feeling of having a choice instead of just being directed by your animal brain is to practice. So I want you to practice using the hand model. Remember to use it as an anchor or a visual. It can help you notice when your lid is starting to flip, when you start to feel dysregulation, when you start to feel that pull towards that dysregulating habit, whether it's alcohol or doom scrolling or sugar, whatever it is, practice the model and notice. It gives you that space to reach for a different tool instead, and it gives you the power to choose. Another fun way to use this flip the lid model is to actually teach it to your friends and family. It's such a nice anchor and a visual for not just noticing dysregulation, but for signaling to your loved ones that you are dysregulated. This way, people will know, oh, okay, she's not quite in her logical brain. She is feeling some dysregulation, and she might need a moment to come back down and come back to feeling regulated. It saves a lot of hard feelings and from making situations worse. If this video gave you something useful, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of tool I'm going to keep bringing you every week. Thank you so much for taking this journey with me. And as always, I'm rooting for you.